Hi, everyone. Welcome to Brattleboro's Town Matters podcast. This podcast is a brief update on what's happening in Brattleboro town government. I'm your host, Town Manager John Potter, broadcasting from the BCTV studios in Brattleboro, Vermont. Today, I will give you an update on the Select Board's last several meetings held on Tuesday, July 22nd, Monday, August 4th, and Tuesday, August 5th. Then I'll go over the agenda for their next regular meeting that will be on Tuesday, September 9th at 6:15 p.m. and a special budget listening session to be held at the Brooks Memorial Library on September 11th. Also, I'll go over a few announcements before wrapping up. So, the board had a meeting back in July 22nd. And at this meeting, they had 9 items on their consent agenda. And just so that you have a sense of what those are, they approved a first and third class liquor license for Sage Pub. They approved a first class liquor license for the Brattleboro Inn. And they approved a second class liquor license, tobacco license, and tobacco substitute permit for Yazzy's Market. Also on the consent agenda were several equipment purchases, including a $115,478 flushing machine for the highway department, and also a backhoe loader at a cost of $126,185. And the water utility acquired 3 trucks for a total cost of $116,704. And then there were 2 grants also on the consent agenda. The town has been awarded and accepted an opioid settlement funding grant in the amount of $32,157. And the board, by approving the consent agenda, ratified an application that the fire department put in for a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant in the amount of $20,473. So all of those 9 items, those were all approved by a vote of 5-0 on consent. So the first item under regular business was an update from Green Mountain Power on the Ames Hill Road project. This is a project to underground power lines on Ames Hill Road. And Tim Jones and Don Mills from Green Mountain Power joined the board to talk about their schedule for doing this project, which was planned for August. And the board discussed culverts and also the idea of getting other utilities to also go underground, which Green Mountain Power says they are reserving space for in case any of the others want to join that. So no motion was required on this item. Following that, there was a discussion about 2025 tax year contributions, and Town Assessor Jennifer Burnell joined the meeting, and she asked the board whether they would like to ask nonprofit organizations for additional contributions that could offer some additional revenue to the town. And after quite a bit of discussion, the board moved to approve a list of parcels for a negotiated municipal contribution with a letter to be finalized by Peter Case, Heidi Fisher, and Oscar Heller under the direction of the town assessor's office. And that motion passed by a vote of 4-1. After that, there was a budget report for fiscal year 25 for the month of May. And in that report, there was discussion about EMS funding and revenues, the expected deficits in the utilities and parking funds, as well as transfers and several other items regarding the budget. No motion was required for that item. Then the board discussed the vacant building ordinance, which is now in effect, and they moved to approve a revised vacant building fee schedule, and they moved to appoint Brian Bannon, zoning administrator, as the building safety officer, which is referred to in the ordinance, and that motion passed by a vote of 5-0. The last item on the board's July 22nd meeting was the fire department's quarterly report, and this was an update that Fire Chief Jay Simons and Assistant Fire Chief Charles Keir, as well as EMS Superintendent Billy Fritz, gave. to the board, and there was discussion about reimbursements, about vacancies, and the hiring process at the fire department. The board also talked with them about decreased response times for many of their calls, even while they've been responding to a higher volume of calls. So that was interesting. And then the board moved to accept the fire department's quarterly report as presented, and that passed by a vote of 5-0. Okay, so that was July 22nd. Their next meeting was held on August 4th, and that was a special meeting. It was the Select Board's annual retreat where they got a little more in-depth around what their priorities are for the next couple of years. The meeting had first a review of town plans, policies, and charter duties, and Planning Director Sue Fillion led that discussion. A second item they talked about was past select board priorities. So what have the past couple of select boards chosen as their priorities? Then the board got into determining what their own priorities would be for 2025 through 2027. They talked about a wide range of things, which is summarized in the minutes and a memo at the next board's meeting. And they built a consensus list of 5 priorities, which they will possibly approve at their September 9th meeting. And those priorities were to increase town revenue from sources in addition to property tax increases, to continue to explore revenue sharing with the state, to designate child safety zones, to expand the housing stock, and to prioritize the town's financial responsibility and health. That was the main parts of the retreat. They touched quickly on FY27 budget development, process improvements, and state legislative priorities, but did not go into depth on any of those. So they all went home and they came back the next day on Tuesday, August 5th for a regular meeting. And at that meeting, they had 4 items on consent, and those included approval of a second-class liquor license for Kinney Drugs, award of a $100,640 bid for slope stabilization project on Melchin Road out in West Brattleboro, award of a $158,000 bid for work on a sidewalk at Oak Grove, and ratification of a $10,800 change to the William Street retaining wall repair project. That consent agenda passed by a vote of 5-0. Under regular business, the board heard a June 2025 finance report, which was a year-end unaudited look at fiscal year 25. HR Director Sally Cruz-Nix and Finance Consultant Bonnie Batchelder entered the meeting and updated the board on finances through the end of the fiscal year. They talked about items such as an accelerated payment, finding a new auditor, and employee contributions. They discussed the differences between revenues and receivables, and a number of other items that board members and public raised. The board moved to accept the finance report, and that passed by a vote of 5-0. The second and last item on August 5th was board nominations for a Brattleboro Community Television Board representative from the town. And the Select Board moved to nominate Communications Coordinator Seth Thomas to the Brattleboro Community Television Board. And that passed by a vote of 5-0. And that was August 5th. The next Select Board meeting is a regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 9th, and this is what will be on the agenda for that meeting. On consent, there will be an annual entertainment license, which will be considered for approval for both a place called Halo Hollow and also for Tavernier Chocolates. There will be a consideration of acceptance of the Downtown Improvement District vote results, which have now been certified. A grant acceptance and appropriation of a $50,000 grant for the FY26 Municipal Roads Grant in Aid program. There will be ratification of a lease with the Brattleboro Co-op at the Brattleboro Transportation Center. There will be approval of the Select Board 2025 to 2027 priorities, which the board came up with at their annual retreat. There will be approval considered for a CDBG grant application for the Detman Road Bridge. There will be consideration for acceptance and appropriation of support for acceptance and appropriation of a Downtown Vibrancy Fund Award for the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. Authorization of a $55,987 purchase for a police department vehicle. Authorization for the town participating in a new opioid settlement partnership for, I believe it's Purdue. The final thing on consent is authorization of a $1,247 contract for a printer lease at the Brooks Memorial Library. Under regular business, the board will be announcing committee vacancies. There are several vacancies on town committees and boards that people are interested in filling. Then representatives from the Groundworks Collaborative will be joining the Select Board's meeting to update the town on the good work that Groundworks has been doing. This will be followed by consideration of a second-class liquor license, tobacco license, and tobacco substitute endorsement permit for Smoke and Munch on Putney Road. And then that will be followed by a review of a draft town charter and a discussion around related petitions, charter petitions that have been either submitted or circulating. And there will be a presentation by the Charter Revision Commission, and also the town attorney will be in attendance to help the board understand all of the issues currently being discussed around changes to the town charter. The final item on September 9th will be a monthly budget update for July for the first month of fiscal year 26, and that is September 9th. Then on Thursday, September 11th, there will be a special meeting at the Brooks Memorial Library, which is a Select Board budget listening session. And the items on the agenda for that will be first a review of a FY27 budget development schedule, and then the board will be in listening mode to hear from interested members of the public to provide feedback. And some of the questions that the board is tossing out there that they would love to get feedback on are: what values do you want to see reflected in next year's budget? What do you most want to see changed in next year's budget? And are there any town services that you want to see protected in next year's budget? So that's for September 11th, if you are interested. Then a couple of announcements to wrap things up. The town of Brattleboro will modify its parking zones on Wednesday, September 3rd. These adjustments were based on public feedback of the parking system since its launch back in November 2024, and they are part of a broader effort to streamline the way users are able to park and pay for parking in the downtown. Parking zones are going to be renamed using numbers only. So rather than typing the word zone followed by a number, users will simply enter a string of numbers when paying through the Park Smarter app or when they text to pay. You can find more detailed information about the new parking zones by visiting brattleboro.gov/parking. The Recreation and Parks Department is now accepting registrations for fall programs, including youth sports like flag football, soccer, and gymnastics. You can sign up for rec programs by visiting the Gibson-Aiken Center on Main Street or by registering online at brattleboro.gov/recreation. The tennis and pickleball courts at Living Memorial Park will be closed now for construction through September, but starting on September 15th, players can visit the Gibson-Aiken Center on Main Street to play pickleball indoors. And the last announcement I had is a reminder on the listening session for the FY27 budget process. That will be on September 11th, Thursday, September 11th, starting at 6:15 p.m. at Brooks Memorial Library. I understand there may be coffee, tea, and cookies to entice you to come out and give the Select Board your thoughts on next year's general fund budget. That is a recap of what's happening in town government in Brattleboro. Please reach out to me at the town manager's office or the town manager at brattleboro.gov if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to hear on this podcast, or if you want to discuss anything further. There's lots of additional information, of course, on the town website, brattleboro.gov. And thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again soon.